Rome, Open City was the film that introduced Italian neo-realism to the world. It also made internationally famous its star, Anna Magnani, and its director, Roberto Rossellini. In Paris, Rossellini is still regarded as a master, and 12 years after his death in 1977, a complete retrospective of his films is being held at the Cinémathèque Française, below the Palais de Chaillot. It was here that this great innovator in the cinema became the father to the French new wave of the 60s, who flourished under the protective gaze of the founder of the Cinémathèque, Henri Langlois.
Rossellini, c'était le néoréalisme, et le néoréalisme, c'était plusieurs personnes. Tandis qu'à partir de ce moment-là, vraiment, Rossellini, c'est un monsieur extraordinaire qui est allé jusqu'au bout, qui n'a pas capitulé, un auteur qui sort de lui-même ces choses. Bon. C'est ce qu'il a fait de ce cinéma. Il fait du cinéma comme on fait du pain, alors que les autres font des tartes à la crème ou des brioches. Lui, il fait du pain.
I just went once to Hollywood. I'm in my late 20s. It was my first time, and I have met a makeup artist who understood that I was Ingrid Bergman's daughter, but I don't think made the connection with my father. And so he said, Ingrid Bergman was a great actress, that she married a terrible Italian director. You know what he did, this guy? He would film horrible thing in the street that I see every day stepping out my apartment, and he wants me to pay $5?
After neorealism, Rossellini achieved further notoriety in his partnership with Ingrid Bergman. Tonight's arena looks at the life and work of this charismatic and controversial director.
Il vero mestiere che uno deve imparare è il mestiere di uomo. Il mestiere del regista, il mestiere del pittore, sono niente se uno non impara il mestiere di uomo. Il mestiere che bisogna imparare è quello di uomo, di essere uomo il più possibile. Questo è il punto importante.
Roberto Rossellini was born in 1906, one of 4 children to wealthy middle-class parents in Rome. It was a close-knit family and was to remain so. The music for most of his films was composed by his younger brother, Renzo. They received a cultural education from their father, a highly successful architect. Among his creations was one of the grandest cinemas in Rome. And it was in the Barberini, with a free pass, that the young Roberto was first dazzled by realistic portrayals of love in Murnau's Sunrise, and of war in King Vidor's The Big Parade. But his own route to filmmaking was entirely casual.
My father was rich, and I was a bad boy, not doing anything, you know. So because I was what they call today a playboy. It's funny to be at my age. I was a playboy, and so where you go, just in the world of the show, and so theater and movie, etc. And after the death of my father, we get broken very easily, also because I spend a lot of money, so I have to earn some money and I have to do something. And because that was the world whom I know very well, so I was accepted there and I started to work there.
No one then in Italian cinema could avoid the influence of the fascist government. In 1937, Mussolini himself opened the famous studio of Cinecittà. It's still today the major centre of Italian film production, and it was in this environment that Rossellini began as a scriptwriter, working for the son of Il Duce, Vittorio Mussolini. Aside from comedies and costume epics, films would frequently promote the ideology of fascism through heroic figures from the armed forces.
The film of propaganda in general gave the image of the hero as somebody already on the monument, some very heroic, very monumental. The heroes of the movie of Rossellini in that time in the country were simple men, simple soldier. And in this way we can recognize already something of his future style.
In Rossellini's first feature, The White Ship, the spectacle was tempered by scenes of the wounded sailors. In The Man of the Cross, he dealt with Italian soldiers fighting the Reds on the Russian front. The battle scenes had a remarkable documentary quality, and at the same time, Rossellini emphasized the suffering caused by the war. With Rome under Nazi occupation, Rossellini went underground. Working in secret, he put together stories of the resistance based on everyday experience. It was this that gave Rome Open City its feeling of real lives in front of the camera.
Sa parlare bene lui, ma io credo che sia così, che non dobbiamo aver paura né oggi né in avvenire, perché siamo nel giusto, nella via giusta, capisci, Pina?
Sì, Francesco.
Noi lottiamo per una cosa che deve venire, che non può non venire. Forse la strada sarà un po' lunga e difficile, ma arriveremo e lo vedremo un mondo migliore. E soprattutto lo vedranno i nostri figli.
The script was drawn from true stories of a partisan priest and of children fighting for the resistance. But Rossellini was freed from studio constraints.
How much of the script was changed when you shot it as you shot it? Or
Every second.
every second?
Yes.
You do a lot of improvisation in front of the camera?
Yes. Yes.
The hero's debauched girlfriend was played by a cinema usherette, the chief of police by Rossellini's lawyer, and the Gestapo officer, a German ballet dancer. From this unconventional casting, the greatest revelations were Anna Magnani, a popular comedienne at the time, and, as the priest, Aldo Fabrizi. A hugely successful music hall comic, his sense of timing was to add some light relief to an otherwise dark film.
Buongiorno, reverenda.
Buongiorno.
Desidera?
Non avreste per caso un Sant'Antonio Abate?
Spiacete, ne avevamo tempo fa, ma va poco. Avrei però un San Rocco.
Grazie, non mi interessa.
Come? Non le interessa un santo come San Rocco? S'accomodi. Venga a vedere. Venga pure. È anche un bel lavoro, sa.
Beh, vediamo.
Allora io vado, Vabbè, ricordati di passare da Chiurazzi. Va bene. Glielo do per poco.
Io dovrei parlare con Francesco. Mi manda l'uomo dalle scarpe strette.
Attenda un momento. Si accomodi, reverendo, lo aspettano.
The story how Open City was created is extraordinary because nobody can imagine the sacrifice, the ideas, the fantasy to make a movie in a town like Rome just after the war, and the North was not yet finished the war. To make a movie without money, without set, without lamps, without studios. It was an unbelievable adventure.
Rossellini even had to use still camera stock bought from chemist shops and on the black market. Filming was done entirely without sound and the dialogue dubbed on later, a practice now common in Italy. Although shooting mostly on location, in the Via degli Avignonesi, Rossellini found one tiny studio, which today is a betting shop. On the floor above was a brothel, from which Rossellini stole electricity to power his lights. This studio was the unlikely setting for the Gestapo headquarters, where the final brutal scenes of Nazi torture were filmed.
Sentite, signor Ferraris, io ve l'ho già detto, molta stima per voi e apprezzo molto, credetemi, questa prova del vostro coraggio, del vostro spirito di sacrificio, ma voi dovete comprendere che non è più possibile continuare. Voi siete un comunista. Il vostro partito ha concluso un patto di alleanza con le forze reazionarie. Voi ora marciate insieme contro di noi, ma domani, quando Roma sarà occupata o liberata, come dite voi, saranno ancora vostri alleati questi alti ufficiali monarchici? Io vi offro di risolverlo questo problema. Datemi i nomi dei generali badogliani, mettetemi in condizioni di arrestarli e io garantisco la libertà a voi e l'immunità agli uomini del vostro partito. Dunque, signor Ferraris. Sei tutti forti, mi sa offendere!
Many people say it is too early to speak about these facts. In the contrary, me was one of the few people who wrote very good about the movie, because maybe I was partisan in Rome, and I appreciated the way in which he told the story, the simple story of the simple people in that time.
Despite some critical sniping, Rome Open City became the most popular Italian film of its year. When the film reached the United States and Britain, the reactions were ecstatic.
Like everybody else, I was immensely struck by the excitement of it, the style, of course, the roughness, what we would call the roughness of its style, and undoubtedly that brought the film much closer to reality than the kind of dramatic war films we'd had from Hollywood or from Britain.
With the liberation of Rome, the American market opened up to Italian filmmakers. Rossellini met entrepreneur Rod Geiger, who bought the American rights to Rome Open City and then put up money for his next film. This would follow Italians and Americans fighting side by side in the Allied campaign, with stories showing the complex new relations between the two peoples. Called Paesà, or Fellow Countrymen, it was composed of 6 episodes set in 6 different parts of Italy.
I realized that was not enough what I have done with Open City. So, you know, in reality my position was a moral position. My starting point was a moral position. So being a moral position, I had the feeling that I was a little bit cheating, you know.
In Open City.
In Open City, not consciousness, with consciousness, but, you know, by the use of the thing. So I tried to purify the thing, to refine, to purify the thing.
So how did this breaking up into separate segments help you purify?
Well, because in a short story it's much easier to be pure than in a long story.
One episode is set in occupied Florence.
Alto là, dove tu vai? Vado qui vicino. No, che sei fatto? Non si può attraversare la strada ora. Senti, lasciami andare. Ho mia moglie e il bambino in quella casa lì di fronte. Un momento, lasciami passare, ti prego.
Attimo! No! Fermati! Fermati! My God!
In a city divided between partisans and Nazis, Rossellini shows the chaos and brutality of street fighting with a directness not previously seen in the cinema.
Marco! Oddio!
With the camera now characteristically distant, the film recreates the desperation of the partisans in reprisals against collaborators. Scenes like these were filmed entirely on location, with the crew travelling from Naples to northern Italy, just as the intrepid Rossellini had done before them.
Also the purpose was to see Italy. And Italy is so different, you know, south is one thing, north is completely another thing. The behavior is so deeply different and the things are so different. And also the situation was maturing. little by little, you know. So even the political consciousness was coming up little by little, you know.
Entrammo a Pisa, nella città dove abitavamo, in un cinema, devo dire quasi deserto, saranno state 10 persone, anzi alcuni uscivano dicendo non entrate perché il film è bruttissimo. Entrammo in questo cinema e ci imbattemmo con le immagini, le grandi, potenti immagini di Paesà. E vedemmo sullo schermo riproposta quella realtà della guerra che avevamo vissuto da poco e credevamo di averla capita vivendola, ma vedendola sullo schermo, riproposta da Rossellini, comprendemmo molto di più quello che avevamo vissuto e noi stessi che l'avevamo vissuta. Ecco, dicemmo, se il cinema ha questa forza di poter riproporre e far capire una realtà con questi mezzi, con questo strumento meraviglioso, ecco, noi allora faremo il cinema. E quel giorno, proprio quel giorno, decidemmo, grazie a Rossellini, che avremmo fatto il cinema.
Un altro partigiano morto. Ce la va a fare?
You want to be careful of that German tower down there. It's a desk.
Non mi interessa, io vado lo stesso.
All right, I'll go over on the beach and explode that mine and attract their attention.
Vasco, guarda di far bene, eh?
Okay.
The final story in Paesà takes place in the marshes of the Po Valley. Americans fight alongside partisans in the final winter of the war.
Ciao!
La prima cosa che mi viene in mente, pensando a quello che Rossellini ci ha lasciato, è il suo piazzamento della macchina da presa. Questa macchina da presa che inquadra campi lunghi, terra, cielo, gli uomini piccoli che si muovono, con una semplicità che va veramente all'essenza della cosa nel rapporto uomo-natura, che forse è la cosa più grande che Rossellini ha dato nella prima parte della sua vita.
Flugzeugschweinerei!
A shadow was cast over Rossellini's next film by the death of his son, Romano. Germany Year Zero was filmed in the ruins of Berlin in 1947. It portrayed a nation searching for a way out of the Nazi legacy. For the entire film, Rossellini's camera follows Edmund, a young boy trying to earn money for his impoverished family. He must help feed a sick father, an elder brother in hiding from the Allies, and a sister whose only source of income would otherwise be prostitution.
The idea that Rossellini had was very clear. We work a lot, night and day, and at the end we had a script. The script was only 15 pages, but the 15 pages were so full of idea, and the main idea, the main line was so clear that with these 15 pages we could make the movie. For example, in one page was written in 3 lines, a horse falls, people come and cut in pieces the horse to have something to eat.
That's the place Hitler's burned. Well, through there? Yeah.
The occupying forces were the main source of food and income for the desperate Berliners.
Wenn ich groß bin, dann kaufe ich mir ein Auto. So lange kann ich nicht warten.
Edmund!
Warten Sie einen Moment.
Edmund, komm, schnell!
In one scene, Edmund has been given a record to sell on the black market by his former teacher, a die-hard Nazi.
Ja, jetzt können Sie hören. So, ja, ein bisschen schnell.
Was geht nicht so?
Ach, das ist ja nicht so langweilig.
Tage hochhalten, gerade dadurch dürren und wenn es wettert. Und ich bin stolz darauf, der Führer dieser Nation zu sein, nicht in glücklichen Tagen, sondern besonders in schweren. Und ich bin glücklich, dass ich in solchen Tagen einer Nation von mir aus wieder Kraft und Vertrauen geben kann, dass ich das ganze deutsche Volk aufrichten darf und aufrichten kann, dass ich im Saal kann, deutsches Volk sei völlig beruhigt, was aus Rheinmark, das werden wir alles meistern, am Ende steht der Sieg.
His first intention was to shoot all the movie in Berlin. But the difficulty of the life in Berlin in that moment, the fact also that we could not be far from Anna Magnani. Anna Magnani was not to come in Berlin. In that moment, he was in love with Anna Magnani. Anna Magnani didn't like to fly. But so was always the life of Rossellini, mixed always very much private life with profession. He cannot divide the two experiences. And so he did decide to go back to Rome and to build in Rome, in a studio, some set. During these 2 months, all the group of the actors which came from Berlin, they became very fat, because in Berlin they didn't eat at all, or very, very little. As they arrived in Rome, they started to eat pizza, spaghetti, cappuccini, and they became very fat. But day by day, we didn't realize this. We didn't realize this when we started to shoot, and we have seen after on the screening, we realized, and also the editor said, but how to put together this material, because we have some very thin people coming from the street and going inside the house, and then they open the door and the house comes somebody absolutely different, because it's another person, was 5 to 10 kilos more. And so we have to wait to stop, really, to have the time 1 week to let again the actor to become a little thin. And so we start again.
Du hast dich wieder ganz schmutzig gemacht. Was ist? Hast du die Karte 2 bekommen? Nein, die haben gemerkt, dass ich nicht 15 Jahre bin.
Das ist doch ganz klar. Das habe ich euch ja vorher gesagt. Ich bin eigentlich froh, dass es so gekommen ist. Das ist keine Arbeit für einen 13-jährigen Jungen.
Jetzt will aber mehr zu essen, das ist auch für Karl-Heinz.
Hast du das gehört? Karl-Heinz? Ist es dir klar, dass dein Bruder die ganze Schwere unseres Daseins allein auf seinen Schultern trägt?
The public stayed away from Germany Year Zero, unprepared for Rossellini's bleak depiction of their present suffering. Having said his final words on the war, Rossellini abandoned neorealism. Although still married, he made a star vehicle for his lover, Anna Magnani. L'amore, or Love, was in 2 parts. The first, an adaptation of Jean Cocteau's The Human Voice, and the second, the story of a simple woman who believes she is impregnated by St. Joseph. The Silent Saint was played by the film's scriptwriter and Rossellini's former collaborator, Federico Fellini. But although the film was to scandalize the Catholic Church, this was nothing compared to what was to come. Across the Atlantic was a potential rival to Magnani. Since Ingrid Bergman's arrival in Hollywood in 1939, she had become one of their top stars. And in her screen image, she had acquired the aura of a saint.
I mean, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she was slightly bored. And I've wondered myself if being an European and being an American during the time of the war and looking back at Europe, about her own country, her mother was German, if she didn't feel very connected to the war and to these very strong feelings, and Hollywood started to look a little bit just only entertaining.
I happened to see a picture called Rome Open City, and it so struck me, it so moved me, and it was the real feeling, and the people were real, and that wonderful human feeling came across the screen that it was hard to find. Now, I don't want to say that all Hollywood movies were that, because I made myself so many good movies in Hollywood that I'm terribly grateful for. It was just that I was looking for something new, something different.
My mother started to dream about working in films like that, and she was a very careful person, so she waited long enough to see the second film of this director, and the second film was Paisa. And she was then very impressed, and she decided to write him a letter and invite him to meet with her and do a film together.
I didn't think he would ever get enough courage to write to me, because, I mean, he wouldn't think that anybody that lives a luxury life in Hollywood, and I was in those days very high on top of the box office, he wouldn't possibly get the idea that I would like to come to Italy and make one of his little pictures, you know, for very little money. So I had to tell him that, and I didn't know how to do it except write a letter.
Dear Mr. Rossellini, I saw your films Open City and Paisa and enjoyed them very much. If you need a Swedish actress who speaks English very well, who has not forgotten her German, who is not very understandable in French, and who in Italian knows only ti amo, I'm ready to come and make a film with you.
Rossellini had never actually heard of Ingrid Bergman, but realized this was an extraordinary offer. The film he proposed to her was Stromboli. Her role was Karin, a Lithuanian refugee. Desperate to escape internment after the war, she marries a poor fisherman from the volcanic island.
Is it always acting?
Yes.
Bergman came with Hollywood money from RKO Studios, which Howard Hughes had acquired solely to add her to his collection. But Hollywood practice was not Rossellini's way.
We had a story outline, and then the dialogue was always written as we went along. And of course, it wasn't so easy to play with the amateurs on the island.
New Terra.
My leading man came from Salerno, but he was a fisherman. He was picked up on the beach, and he thought he was going to work in the crew. He had no idea that he was going to become my leading man.
I don't care about your barley, or your vine, or your new terra. I want to leave this island and go away, far away. Like all the others who lived here and were born here and went away, far away.
Ma che è successo? Che?
Listen, this is my home. You're my wife. You stay here because I want to.
Bergman found working with Rossellini as trying as her character Karin found life on Stromboli. She filmed this experience with her own camera, and these home movies were shown for the first time last year.
Maybe when I switched from American movies to Italian movies, of course that was my own choice, but I didn't realize that he worked with amateurs. And it was terribly difficult to work with people when you had worked 10 years in Hollywood, and I had worked several years before that in Sweden, where people knew their dialogue and they knew their answer, you know, they understood the lights and the spots on the floor and how they should turn because the camera is here and the sound is, all those things. And these people never knew anything. They didn't even know when they were supposed to talk. And I spoke in English and they spoke in Italian because the whole thing was going to be dubbed afterwards. And it was so difficult. And sometimes I almost gave up because Mr. Rossellini had to put, thread, thin little cords in their feet, in their shoes. And he had them there and he played with them like a marionette. He pulled them when they were supposed to talk. So he was having a great time pulling them just the right moment. But of course, he didn't pull me, and I never knew really when I was supposed to come in with my dialogue. Although that was very difficult, but it was a marvelous way of getting away from everything that I wanted to get away from Hollywood, and that was all the ease. Here was nothing that was easy. In Hollywood in those days was like a dream. If you wanted pink elephants, you'd get pink elephants, or you get trained flies or anything. I mean, there was just a ring, a call up, and we get them for tomorrow. And all the talent was there, and an enormous amount of people in the crew that worked with you. And I was very spoiled. So, which was the complete difference when you came to Italy and you did everything yourself, and in a very, very hard way. But that is what I wanted, and I got what I wanted.
Because Berg, deeply Catholic island, where the fishermen give thanks to the Virgin for a successful catch, Karen is bewildered by her situation.
Let's go.
How do you feel?
Better.
Did you like the fishing?
No, it was horrible.
What's the matter?
I don't feel well.
Why? You think? Maybe?
Yes, it is 3 months now. I believe I'm pregnant.
Karen, mio Dio, I am so happy. Are you?
Yes, I'm happy too.
Life imitated art with the birth of little Roberto in February 1950. The father of the child was Rossellini. Unfortunately, the event preceded Bergman's divorce by a week.
I certainly thought that there would be some write-ups in the paper that I wanted a divorce.
Being a former fascist, Bergman was dubbed Hollywood's apostle of degradation. Stromboli was a flop. In 1952, tired by press harassment, Rossellini and Bergman proudly displayed to photographers their newborn twins, Isotta and Isabella.
Well, father was more of a fighter as a person. Mother was more vulnerable, and I think she suffered most. If you see her face in Stromboli, and if you see her face in Voyage to Italy, it is only 3 years between these two films. She's still a very beautiful woman, but then it looks like, you know, 15 years have gone by. She's still a child when she does Stromboli. She has still round cheeks and a very naive, innocent look. And I always wondered, as a daughter, if it wasn't the suffering of all the scandal that made her age so fast in such short time.
Bergman continued to show faith in Rossellini by appearing in his Italian films.
Like my daughter Marianne.
In Voyage to Italy, she again plays an unhappily married woman, this time an English tourist in Naples.
It was found in the woods. It is a good thing they exist no longer. They were very dangerous. This is the drunken fort. He is about to fall asleep. Sleep is a wonderful habit. Here we have a young discus thrower, a Greek.
George Sanders, no Mediterranean youth, but the epitome of the suave Englishman, was cast by Rossellini as Bergman's irritable husband.
The so-called Anglo-Saxon world, you know, is completely different in behavior, in thinking, in feeling from us. So I think it was a good comparison to put two English people inside Italy to get inherited the house in Italy. Everything is shocking, you know, for them.
Not knowing where the story was leading, the Hollywood-trained actors were severely tested by Rossellini's refusal to follow a fixed script.
Brancati and Roberto, they was maybe in the evening. They was writing something for the day next. So every morning, everybody was asking the director of production, what are we going to do today? I remember George Sanders coming from Hollywood. He was completely mad about this system because he was completely, he could not understand that people could shoot a picture without script and without preparation.
One night, I remember he phoned me at 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, what happened? So I have decided I commit suicide. I think it's a good idea. What do you say? Because he was unhappy in the film, so it's too much to commit suicide. So I said, well, what is wrong? If we do a bad film, it can be another bad film, it's no damage for you, for me, for anybody in the world. So why you want to commit suicide? I think it's too dramatic. So he got really hurt against me, and he hated me deeply, and he made a lot of interviews saying a lot of bad things. That's all.
I'm terribly thirsty. It's this food, you know. I'm not used to all those sauces.
Ma che volete?
Something to drink.
Ah, e se volete sentire meglio vai da pigliare un po' di bicarbonate, che le fa bene.
Well, but I just want you to fill it up.
Capite, state ubriache. Che è successo, Top?
This wine is excellent, you know, but I'd just like you to fill it up.
Ah, non volete bicarbonate, non vi posso servire, non ho la chiave del cellare.
But, you misunderstand me. I want to fill it up with wine.
Ah, sì, Kill non ti capisce, perché fai tanta confusione? Portala al tuo signorino Tony, Kill ti capisce e ci spiega, va? Va bene.
Rossellini appears to draw Sanders' performance out of the actor's real discomfort, as if the film is in part a documentary on the troubled Englishman.
Vieni!
How dare you speak to me like that?
Andiamo dal signorino Tony, vieni! Vieni, vieni!
I have a notion, a very clear notion of the story, and I have a very clear idea about what I want to say. That's one thing. But when you do the scene, you are in front of a reality which is absolutely impossible to guess in a table sitting in another place. So you have the elements there, so you must adapt to those elements.
During the picture, one day, Roberto had a telephone call from the director of the Pompeian Museum, saying that they were going to discover something very special. So Roberto, he thought immediately that it was very important to go there. So we have been rushing there with a camera and everything, with a few lights, and we have been shooting like a documentary.
It's on this spot that they found a hollow space. When the men find hollow ground, they make a number of holes, and through these they pour plaster. The plaster fills out the hollow space left in the ground by the body, which has disintegrated. The shapes of bodies or objects buried for over 2,000 years are reconstructed this way. Look, you can begin to see something.
What is it?
See. Looks like a leg.
This discovery was the vindication of Rossellini's method, a chilling parallel to the characters' inner lives.
Two people just as they were at the moment they died.
Un uomo e una donna.
A man and a woman. Perhaps husband and wife, who knows? May have found death like this together. What's happened to Mrs. Joyce?
I don't know.
Is there anything I can do?
No, I'll talk to her. Catherine, what's the matter? What's happened to you?
Oh, Alex, this is too much. I can't stand it any longer. Please take me home. I want to go home. I don't want to stay here any longer.
Voyage to Italy was to have a greater influence on the French New Wave than any other Rossellini film. But the Bergman period was sadly misunderstood at the time.
In una Roma che non capisce, ha subito faticosamente la vita dell'alta società. La scena a cui il regista dà il via si svolge in un gabinetto di psicanalisi.
Da suo marito, lei
No,
potrebbe.
if I went back home, I would save neither myself nor the others.
Un primo piano di smarrito struggimento. La crisi di questa donna è stata provocata dal suicidio del suo bambino. Accompagnata dall'intellettuale, cercherà di ritrovarsi girando le borgate di Roma per conoscere la vita nella sua crudezza. Per ora continua il dialogo col psicanalista.
Lost with them than to be saved alone. Only when you're completely free are you at peace with the community. Those who are bound to nothing are bound to everybody.
Rossellini didn't extend artistic freedom to Bergman. He wouldn't allow her to work with other directors. He was a warm family man, but he also had a worrying passion for driving Ferraris in sports car races. In the mid-50s, Rossellini and Bergman toured the grand theatres of Europe with a staging of the oratorio Joan of Arc at the Stake.
Confessa, confessa che hai mentito.
Come sottoscrivere se le mie mani sono incatenate?
Ti si toglieranno le catene.
Altre catene più forti mi servono.
Quali catene più forti?
Più forti di quelle di ferro. Sono le catene dell'amore. E l'amore che mi stringe le mani, che mi impedisce...
This theatrical venture wasn't enough to sustain their partnership. They both began to look further afield.
At a certain point in 1955-56, he decides to go to India, which, well, of course, that brings me about because that's where I met my mother.
Rossellini fell in love again. Her name was Sonali Dasgupta, and unfortunately she was already married to the producer of his latest project. The Rossellini-Bergman romance was over. It was a typical move for Rossellini to voyage to the far ends of the world. With his career in European cinema at its lowest point, he found renewed inspiration in the life and culture of India. The film he made there was like a return to Paisa, a series of episodes merging documentary footage with staged scenes. These were also based on his own observations while travelling around the country. The film expressed his continuing passion for introducing one culture to another.
It's quite an important movie because it's sort of like the first touch of what would come later in the 60s, which is the abandoning of cinema for television, leaving fiction behind and going towards the history of mankind. I think in 1961 he said, cinema is dead. A lot of people laughed, of course, when he said that, but for him it was dead, certainly.
After making a handful of films for the commercial cinema, he tired of the constraints of producers. Rossellini decided he was better served by television, where he could reach a larger audience and have greater freedom.
He wanted to be more direct. He wanted to take episodes, characters from history that were extremely significant to him, and tell their stories in a very sober way. The aesthetics have always been very important when you're making an historical movie, whether it be about the Romans or the Egyptians. We've always been used to seeing these movies that are based on great photography and huge sets and extras and incredible and probably improbable costumes. Instead, he started with a very accurate research, and the movie would start 3 years before it would be shot.
Important, what is touching, what is exciting, what is curious, is to see what is the real behavior of man. To do the character, you have to build the character on him. Yes. So you have to stay a little bit with him to discover what are the attitudes each one of us do certain kind of gesture, as a certain kind of rhythm in the voice, or the choice of certain words, etc. You know? So if you adapt the thing that you have to do to those kind of things, and you suggest to him.
He has no talent to say the lines, that you're not worried about. I mean, he has no talent to perform as an actor would perform.
No.
What are some of the devices that you would use? How would to make him move and create what you
move? To move. You say, well, you come from here, you go there. When you are there, you turn, you go there, you go there. That's purely physical movement.
Your films, people talk a lot. There is a problem in getting the dialogue out.
It all depends of the kind of film that you make. If it's a show, if it's theater, you must interpret the thing, you must underline the thing, you must give any sort of significance to the thing. When you do the filming, you do that with the camera.
He would shoot a scene with a big master, and that was it. No close-ups, not many setups for a scene. The camera with the operator would be moving back and forth, always very slowly. And he would be sitting with this little instrument that he invented, which was nothing but a remote control of the zoom lens, which he used to operate without looking at the camera. At that point, he knew exactly what was in the viewfinder, and he never needed to look in the viewfinder. In editing plays, they would sync up dailies for him, and they would send it to the house. And then it was very simple for him, and I was sitting next to him. It was fascinating for me. I was 12, 13 years old when the machine came in the house. And he would just put one scene after another. You put scene 1, then you take out the scene 2, and you put scene 3. There is no close-ups, intercuts. It was quite simple.
Pronti? Dai direzione. Parte.
In 1974, Rossellini returned to the cinema with Italy Year One, in which he recreated the post-war period he had once filmed while it was happening.
Era lì per pigliarmi le misure, la facevo fermare. Dai.
Azione Nicola!
On set with his sister, his grandson, and his very first wife, Rossellini surrounded himself with his family.
Dai, pronto?
After years spent simplifying his technique, he had lost his enthusiasm for the actual shooting of a film.
Ho detto al di là di quel muraglione ultimo, al di là! Oh, al di là, che vuol dire al di là? Non vuol dire al di qua, al di là! Andate dall'altra parte, andate a morire ammazzati a Trapani! Dove fare? Levatevi dei coglioni da lì!
Fuori.
Rossellini was directing another non-professional in the role of De Gasperi, the Christian Democrat who dominated Italian politics after the war. This sympathetic portrait of the man was attacked by all political parties, including the film's sponsors, the Christian Democrats themselves.
I think Rossellini was a man who believes in man, in individual man, more than in ideology. He was, in a certain time, even the leader of the film office of the Democrazia Cristiana. But that had nothing to do with his movie. His movies, there was never an attitude of conformism, of religious conformism. He didn't believe in dogma. He believes in the capacity of the man to react to facts. Also in the worst moment of the history, to have the courage to say no, as the hero of Rome Open City, as the hero of all his movies.
C'ho gente intorno impegnatissima politicamente, gente proprio molto rispettabile, perché sono lì con una fede proprio da santi, da profeti, no? E io insisto sempre, lo fate questo esercizio tutti i giorni, di imparare una cosina nuova, tutti i giorni, fare il lavoro di demolire un pochino la vostra ignoranza, e se non lo fate tutto quanto diventa completamente vano.
He went back to school, he went to Rice University, and his purpose was to do films on science. And he did little experiments in the kitchen when we were in Italy. And I remember once he sent me out to fish some urchin, and I had to come back home with a bucket full of water and urchins, and then we would cut them and find the male and female and mix the eggs with the sperms and try to film right in the kitchen, trying to film the first division of the eggs as they are fertilized. So it was a very kind of rudimental, very experimental, homemade science film, but that was his goal. But he died too soon to be able to ever make a film about it.
Aside from his fascination with the simplest forms of life, Rossellini also planned films on Karl Marx and the history of Islam. His final completed production was A Life of Christ. In 1977, Rossellini made his last public appearance as president of the jury at the Cannes Film Festival. Against strong opposition, he fought for the Taviani brothers' film Padre Padrone to win the Golden Palm. For him, it was a film that kept faith with his principles. It also had the merit of originally being a television production.
Ce film, malgré son austérité, Padre Padrone, qui a remporté la Palme d'Or.
Quando lo incontrammo dopo il premio ci disse siete contenti? E noi dicemmo sì. E lui ha detto ora state attenti perché ora parlano tutti bene di voi, ma immediatamente dopo verranno gli anticorpi e quelli sono terribili, cercheranno di distruggervi. Ma voi datemi retta, io dovrei essere già morto 300 volte perché mi hanno innalzato e sepolto per tutto il corso della mia vita. L'unica forza, l'unico scudo che io ho usato per difendermi è stato quello di non cedere mai dalle mie idee, cioè, come diceva prima Vittorio, cercare sempre la verità.
E l'ultima cosa ancora che ci disse, dimenticatemi e fate soltanto e solo la vostra strada. Sarete più soli, ma è questo che si chiede a ogni uomo e noi stiamo cercando di farla.
Freedom is a very exciting thing, you see, and I have tried my best passing through hell to be free always. I never was caught really in the system, but sometimes it's very, very hard. But it's even fine because it's exciting, so I must say never had a boring moment in my life anyway, you know. So many troubles, so no time to be bored.
Ed rimpetto